For the past 10 years, Formula One star Mark Webber has combined world-class performance on 4 wheels with high speeds on 2. He swapped the smell of petrol for the fresh air of Australia's island state and faced whatever challenges his 5-day multi-sport race, the Swisse Mark Webber Tasmania Challenge, can throw at him and his fellow competitors. Since it began in 2003, this tough event has attracted hundreds of enthusiasts, superstars from other sports and elite adventure racers, as it's become one of the world's leading multi-sport events. It's come a long way since the early days as a challenge that Mark put on with a few friends and fellow sportspeople as a way to raise money for charity and stay fit for driving.
For me, the attraction of the outdoors has been there since probably the 99, 2000. I was introduced to road cycling and mountain biking, and I just realised just how awesome it was to be outside. The running, all those type of things, off-road. I love to be under a forest canopy, single trail, all those type of things, the tree routes, just the technical aspect of it, the ascending, doing a nice long mountain bike climb, knowing, wow, that's where we've come from. I get a great buzz out of that.
Back in 2003, that outdoor passion led to action.
My crazy idea to set up a tough 10 to 12 days of really an adventure and get ourselves through a very, very difficult couple of weeks of activities, let's say. We only had a select few group of guys that were up for the challenge in 2003 because it was a very, very big challenge, what we undertook there, and big days. And yeah, the course that year was the hardest thing I've done in my life. Still to this day, it was very, very difficult, and we all got through it. The bond that I got from that, and how I sort of saw how people pull together in adversity, and it was very, very unique in that sort of scenario. We were very remote, and we had to get through those days, and very massive blisters and feet opening up, and we still had to keep pressing on, and then we're on the bikes for another 8 hours or 9 hours the next day. So yeah, they were big days, and I thought, yeah, this can work, but we've got to tweak the model into making it a bit more achievable for other people to come and share these experiences with us.
These days, the event is a slightly less epic 5 days long, but it still provides a challenging experience for any athlete, from the world class to the weekend warrior. Each year, the event has taken teams to new places in Tasmania, surprising competitors with the ever-changing landscapes and activities on offer. As the teams of 2 gather at Mole Creek for this year's challenge, the course is still under wraps, and no one knows what they're in for over the next 5 days. The organisers are promising one of the toughest courses yet, taking in many of Tasmania's iconic landmarks. Amongst the competitors who'll be taking part, there's an expatriate Brit, Mark Hinder. He lives in the state capital of Hobart and won the event back in 2011. He's attempting to regain the title with a new race partner, Tasmanian-born and bred Alex Hunt. Another elite pair is Team Red Bull, featuring Australia's leading male triathlete of recent years, Courtney Atkinson, and Olympic sprint kayak champion Ken Wallace. Ironman Guy Andrews is always tough to beat. He took part in the very first event back in 2003 and has hardly missed an edition since. Teamed up with another Aussie, Xterra champion Ben Allen, they're a formidable elite pair in a tough field with even more names to watch. The world-beating Kiwi duo of Richard Usher and Braden Curry are planning some payback after they lost the Elite Pairs event to Aussies Jared Kohler and James Preto last year. This year they go head-to-head once again. The event is a 5-day stage race for teams of all abilities. Each day there's a minimum course of compulsory checkpoints that everyone has to reach. On top of this, there are optional checkpoints that offer time credits for those who can reach them. Completing the full course with all optionals is 350 kilometres. While no one in the enthusiast category need do that, the elite pairs, if they want to win, will have to try. Day one starts at Mole Creek in the central north of Tasmania. The teams gathering bright and early for the start. Today the teams will cover 71 kilometres in 4 sections, the first of which is a mountain bike via Honeycomb Cave to Lake Mackenzie. This is followed by an off-road 10k run around the lake and a 42-kilometre bike section that takes in the spectacular cliffs at Devil's Gullet. Finally completing a hard first day with a 14-kilometre paddle on Lake Sathana. But the event is not just the usual multi-sport hard graft. Before they start on the main race, there's a mystery discipline for the teams to get their teeth into.
The mystery disciplines come in just because it gives people a bit of... they're just intrigued what might be coming. If you just had a marked course for 8 hours for the day and you know exactly where you're going, exactly what you're doing, not as exciting. But if you've got, first of all, the checkpoints, where are these checkpoints? You know, I've got them on the map, but I've got to go and find them. And then on top of that, you've got to go and do some random events that you might not have foreseen on the notes, for example.
It's Tasmanian-style hard work. Each pair has to cut through a log with double-handed saws before they can mount their bikes. Team Rexona, Ironman Guy Andrews racing with Xterra specialist Ben Allen are the first away, along with the race favourites Usher and Curry. Courtney Atkinson and Ken Wallace are next, the triathlete and the kayaker, just ahead of defending champions Aussies Preto and Kohler.
Anything can happen with adventure racing. There's the environment you've got to deal with and mechanical issues out on course, and particularly this race, you know, navigation as well. So the more time you can go in the right direction, then, you know, obviously you're going to be the winner.
It's about dealing with the unexpected, as Ken Wallace and Courtney Atkinson find out.
What are we, like 800 metres into the race and a snap chain? Not too good.
The pair took part last year. They're certainly not newbies to this and are world-class athletes. Even so, they can hardly afford to give up minutes to adventure racing specialists like Mark Hinder. At the moment, everyone's chasing Richard Usher. The former world adventure racing champion and Olympic mogul skier has won this race before, but with Braden Curry lost out last year.
We haven't really come here to come second, that's for sure. Yeah, we've raced Jared and James a lot this year, so they're racing really well, and it'll be good to see how they go.
It'd be great, you know, to try and get another victory here. You know, it's a very cool event, and it's different from any other event. So we're definitely going to race hard, and you know, this year we're back to, you know, try and right the result and get a bit of revenge.
Usher started in adventure racing but has been very successful in triathlon too. Courtney Atkinson is a triathlon specialist hoping to find some success, making the switch in the opposite direction.
Physical side of it, I mean, it doesn't matter how fit you are, to race 5 days straight is a tough ask. It doesn't, you know, we race some of the toughest one-day events in the world in triathlon, but stressful on the navigation. The physical side of it, hey, it's a big training week.
GP2 racing driver Mitch Evans is an up-and-coming star of the track. Mentored by Mark Webber, he's representing racing drivers this year. Mitch is paired with Sam Steadman in Team Outer Limits.
It's a mega to be part of the 2013 challenge, and I just want to test myself really in a different way and hopefully become a bit stronger mentally and you know, just find my limits really. And I think I'll find them over the next few days.
He's finding the early pace hard to stay with, and there won't be any let-up until the finish of the race in Hobart in 5 days' time. The next checkpoint is located at the mouth of the Honeycomb Cave complex. Mitch is still right in the thick of the chase pack, along with defending champions Preto and Kohler and the Red Bull team.
To have Kenny Wallace, Courtney Atkinson, these guys who are phenomenal athletes come down and do it is sensational. And go up against someone like a Richard Usher, you know, their hats off to him. They just know how awesome he is across the ground, rough terrain, mountain biking, whatever it is, all the skills that these guys use.
The New Zealanders are setting a tough pace, leading by a few minutes from a stressed-looking defending champion Jared Kohler and his partner James Preto. Mark Hinder and Alex Hunt are looking more relaxed in fourth place as they set out on the first run section of the race. Hinder was born in the UK, but he'd count himself just as much a local.
I think we're really going to be really quite strong this week. We just got to race to the best of our abilities and see what happens out there. Race smart. What we're going to try and do is both be involved in navigation, not leave it solely to one person, so we're both aware of if we start making a mistake, then we rectify it as quickly as possible.
Even on the rough ground, Usher and Curry looked determined to keep applying the pressure and finish day one with something in the bank. The onus is on the other elite teams to keep up. To win this race means getting pretty much every optional and the time bonus it gives you. But it's slow going to reach the checkpoints, even if you can find them. Difficulties that apply to every team. For an ITU triathlete and a sprint kayaker, Team Red Bull are doing pretty well.
Here definitely to have a lot of fun and enjoy it and be competitive where we can be. So for me, if a kayak leg was one of the first legs of the day, I'm definitely going to want to go out there and give it a good crack. But the navigation's going to be a bit harder for me and Courtney. It is going to be tough, but where we can, I'm sure that we're going to be competitive.
But your hopes can meet a grim end if the time you use getting a bonus outweighs the actual advantage it gives you.
Looks like we're going the wrong way. It's because we are.
Why's that?
We got lost, went way off course, and now we're backtracking the mandatory checkpoints.
In the elites, the problem for Jared Kohler and James Preto isn't only keeping up with Usher and Curry, but now defending second from Hinder and Hunt. But the pace is relentless from the leading pair, and as Courtney Atkinson and Ken Wallace find out, you can't always trust the surface you're on. But it takes more than dirt and road rash to stop the kayaker. The next destination is the Devil's Gullet in Tasmania's Central Plateau. The lookout platform overhanging the sheer cliff face is easily accessible for tourists, as it is for those in more of a hurry. It's a steep track up there, and the leaders are on and off their bikes all the way. Legs and lungs burning from the ascent, they reach the edge of the cliffs, check in and go. And then it's time to go down again. And after a careful start on the boardwalks, there's several miles of open roads to enjoy. And Guy Andrews is doing just that. As a movie stuntman who worked on the Mad Max films, he isn't scared of much. Some come a bit close to overdoing it. The speeds are spectacular, but every descent has to be paid for with a climb. Courtney Atkinson gives a little assistance to his teammate Ken Wallace, whose speciality lies in another sport. The ideal build for a kayaker is hardly the same as a mountain biker.
I'm so far out of my comfort zone, it's not funny. I'd rather be sitting on my bum paddling around.
He'll soon get his wish. The final stage of the day is a kayak section on Lake Sathana. The race leaders have few weaknesses. The two Kiwis, Curry and Usher, have been devastating on day one. Ken can use the 14-kilometre paddle to try to win back some of the time. After more than 7 hours of flat-out effort, collecting every time bonus en route, Richard Usher's big grin at the finish tells us that he's lived up to the standards that he sets himself. Mark Hinder and Alex Hunt are only 29 minutes behind though, and in a 5-day race, that's still close enough.
It was really enjoyable, especially up top of on the plateau. That was definitely the highlight for today. The last paddle was a bit of a slog, but it wasn't too bad.
At the end of the day, to finish within probably half an hour of those guys, they're the world's best. If we can do that every day, I think we're going to be pretty happy.
They've beaten the defending champions Swisse Active into third, though Kohler and Preto are only another 2 minutes off the pace. Team Rexona are fourth, ahead of Atkinson and Wallace of Red Bull. Sixth place team, Europcar Tasmania, are not pro athletes, but they've taken on the elite category. They're showing the effects of this decision as they limp home to the finish.
Day one's always a bit of a challenge not to try and burn the engine too soon, but certainly got the muscles going.
Some pairs cross the line up to 5 hours later than the leaders, finishing the first of 5 very long days. Overnight rest and recuperation will never be enough. Join us for day 2 when Jared Kohler makes his attack and every team gears up for the assault on Cradle Mountain. Welcome back to the Swisse Mark Webber Tasmania Challenge. It's day 2 and the teams are preparing for a dramatic day of racing in the Cradle Mountain Lake St Clair National Park, part of the Tasmanian Wilderness World Heritage Area. Today the racers will be seeing places familiar and unfamiliar to holidaymakers, beginning with a 10k bike to reach the iconic Cradle Mountain, before the 12.5-kilometre ascent to the summit itself. After this, there's a 5k paddle on Dove Lake, a 13.5-kilometre run to Crater Falls with some difficult navigation, before the 21k off-road ride back home to finish. Fed and watered after a night's rest and recuperation, the pain begins again without any delay as they climb steeply towards the transition to the Cradle Mountain Run. Richard Usher and Braden Curry of New Zealand are first in the standings. Team Swisse Active are only third, but James Preto and Jared Kohler have a chance to exert some pressure on the leaders in the early stages.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a pressure that we would rather have that sort of pressure than the pressure of having to catch up. So, we made a few mistakes yesterday, so we're really focused on what we can do, and just trying to have a really smooth day today and see if we can put a little bit more time on us and the chasers.
The leading elites carry on where they left off yesterday, and the pace on the first 10k is brutal, stringing out the entire field. Jared and James can't maintain it though, and they lose sight of the Kiwis a few kilometres before Cradle Mountain itself comes into view. Usher and Curry are the first to get sight of Tasmania's most famous peak. The 1,545-metre summit is the third highest on the island. With winter snow still packed into some of the crevices and big boulders to scale, a tough climb lies ahead. Usher and Curry have got the same chasing pack behind them, with Mark Hinder still hunting the Kiwis. There are a few other Brit competitors in the field, none of them in quite such an exalted race position though.
Much more difficult than I thought, to be honest. It's totally doable. My team is in a resounding last place at the moment with 12 hours of penalties yesterday, so we're about 10 hours off the pace, but it just doesn't matter because it's absolutely beautiful around here. It's absolutely stunning.
The most difficult section so far comes next, the ascent to the summit of a mountain, which Mark Webber himself has climbed several times in past editions of the challenge.
Cradle Mountain, to get to the top of that, there's a couple of ways up there, but basically you've got to ascend very aggressively up towards the top, and obviously very, very big boulders. The years that I've been up there, and one year in particular was very snowy and icy in some of the shaded sections, so you've got to be very careful of that and just making sure you're not slipping off any of these rocks a bit further up there. But beautiful feeling at the top, just sensational. You're looking from the top of Cradle Mountain, and the view when the viz is good, it's just gorgeous to look off the top.
Though after a moment or two of taking in the view, concentration on foot placing is the order of the day for the descent. There's a brief rest for the quads on the kayak stage on Dove Lake, which follows. .5 kilometres of running takes in more local sights. Apart from the echidnas, there are a few waterfalls and lots of checkpoints. For Team Red Bull, Courtney Atkinson's mostly got to grips with the navigation. Ken's a big man for rough terrain though. And when they do go astray, there's some surprising navigational help at hand.
Hey guys, you might want to go this way though.
Richard Usher is far enough ahead that he can afford to help out.
Shows you the class, obviously, of certain individuals in the race when you know you're in a good position yourself, obviously, and you can see someone's probably going to be able to make a very, very big mistake. Someone like a Richard Usher, I always say Braden Curry, these guys, they've made those mistakes themselves, and they know how much they hurt, particularly when someone like you're talking about Kenny and Courtney, who are very good athletes themselves. They're going to cover some ground pretty quickly, and it takes a lot to come back from that. So, yeah, a nice touch to be able to tell someone, look, you know, mate, you're going the wrong way here, pull it back, and we'll live to fight another day.
Knowing they've got the most time bonuses for the day, the Kiwis won't mind the Red Bull pair tagging along for the final section, which includes some difficult river crossings. As well as the pairs categories, there's also a team event in which two people race at any one time, but have a third member who can be substituted in at transitions. The all-female Team Spirit features 7-time World Surfing Champion Layne Beachley and former World and Olympic Triathlon Champion Emma Snowsall. She's doing the navigation for the team on this section.
10 metres east.
Following the other teams can be a useful strategy too.
Thank you. Yes. Straight.
Before Emma and Nikki lead the charge to the finish of the day, where surfing champion Layne Beachley awaits.
I think we're competitive in a sense that we want to, we've got a big goal to achieve, and ours is just to finish it. We don't want to get lost. We don't want anything like the navigation for us to make it that we don't finish and complete the event. So, for us, the three of us, it is about the completion, and, for us, this is completely out of all of our comfort zones, and I think that's also a really fun thing for us.
We had to have a little race at the end there, you know. A little bit of girl power. Sorry, boys. They were helping us out a little bit, but we were giving them the directions.
Yeah, women can read maps, by the way. We've got compasses in here and we know how to use them.
From girl power to Kiwi power, the two New Zealanders, Usher and Curry, still lead the elite pairs at the end of day 2. Jared Kohler and James Preto have won back a position today. The defending champions are not out of it yet.
You know, it's just amazing to be able to race, you know, some world-class athletes like Richard and Braden through that sort of terrain, and, you know, everyone's pushing themselves to the max, and yeah, it was great fun.
With the state capital, Hobart, still 3 days racing away, the third day takes place in the area of Strawn, on Tasmania's untamed west coast. Starting with an 8-kilometre paddle. The 20-kilometre bike section that follows is the toughest yet, with a soft sand of Ocean Beach to overcome. After this, 11 kilometres of paddling that includes the infamous riptides of Hell's Gate and several occasions where competitors will have to drag their kayaks or even leave them behind to reach the checkpoints. On one occasion, meaning a 14.5-kilometre run to Cape Sorel. Another 21 kilometres of strength-sapping sand makes this the toughest day of the challenge so far.
It's really day 2 and 3 that people are probably at their sorest. Mentally, they're also halfway through the event, so their body is telling them also that they're sorer than they probably are. But just the legs, you know, your quads and your glutes and your calves and everything is really talking to you. You've obviously got some skin off in places. So it's amazing what the body can get used to putting itself through day in, day out.
Even Richard Usher, the race leader, suffering. He's got an ankle injury and is having to seek the attention of the Challenge medical team.
Quite swollen, and it's pretty tender, but I've strapped it up good, so it's only an hour and a half or so of running today, so that should be good for it, and you know, we'll keep icing it and giving it some compression, and hopefully it'll just continue to get better during the rest of the week.
Neither his fellow competitors, nor the course planners for that matter, will make it easy. At the start of day 3, the kayaks are lined up on the shore, but there's no sign of their occupants. They're all on the local tourist boat and will have to jump into the 13-degree water and swim to the beach before getting away.
Really fresh this morning, so it's going to be cold paddling, but to jump in and do a swim beforehand is going to really cap off the start of the day, I think. But there is a lot of paddling involved. I'm looking forward to that, but hopefully we don't get too cold doing it.
Despite a few faceplants, everyone makes it to the shore successfully. Even before they reach the kayaks, Ken Wallace is amongst the fastest, racing Rexona's Guy Andrews for the lead. After dropping to third in the standings yesterday, Mark Hinder and Alex Hunt look determined to do better as they head for the halfway point of the race. The first stage is a checkpoint chase around Strawn Bay. There's not a lot of congestion in the remote west of Tasmania, but this is about as close to it as the competitors will get until they head back to the mainland. At the end of the stage, Ken Wallace has taken Red Bull into a bigger lead on the day. How long can they stay there? Possibly not for long. The surface on the bike stage favours those with lots of experience of technical riding. Getting all of the checkpoints on this ground will be tough. Richard Usher shows how it's done. Others, how it's not. One route option takes teams down Ocean Beach, a feature of the challenge course as far back as 2003. It's a wild stretch of sand. And not all of it's firm under the bike forks as Guy Andrews discovers, losing time to the lead pack. They're already in the kayaks and heading for Hell's Gates, a fierce piece of water where the battle continues after the break. Welcome back to the Swisse Mark Webber Tasmania Challenge. The teams are still in the early stages of day 3 and kayaking through Hell's Gates. Named by the convicts for whom the entrance to Macquarie Harbour marked the beginning of their imprisonment, though it deserves the name for the riptides alone. Mark Hinder, currently third in the standings with Alex Hunt, will have to maintain the pain for another 4 hours of racing today. To break the rhythm, there are kayak portages over rocks and checkpoints in places that require a good head for heights and careful footing. Some of the checkpoints are located on Cape Sorel, and to get them all will demand a 14.5 kilometre run. It'll be a good test of the race leader Richard Usher's ankle. Jared and James of Team Swisse Active are moments behind, and with a lot of kayaking on today's route, Red Bull have stayed with the elite leaders. Ken's away strongly on the run. Can it last?
Woo. Best part of the day running. Great day. Beautiful out here.
Stunning part of Tasmania to over to that west coast, and they're so stubborn and so tough because the winds are so high. All this sort, you can just see how everything over there is just so much harsher, and it needs to be like that because of the conditions. So to give people a chance to experience that, get into Strawn and just see how dramatic it is, how remote it is just so quickly. It's incredible how you can be in a little bit of civilization and then all of a sudden you are just in the middle of nowhere. It's so easy to get lost. So you need to be fit to take that part of Tasmania on.
Defending champions Team Swisse Active are looking that. The race leaders, though, are pushing the pain barrier. Richard Usher and Braden Curry are perhaps relieved that the course designers didn't put in too much footwork for today. As they struggle with leg injuries, any navigational mistakes will be agonising. Nobody wants to run further than they have to, which means the eyes are on the maps as much as the vistas for Emma Snowsall and Lane Beachley.
Yeah, they are, but I don't see any tracks going up that hill. You? No? Okay, we'll keep going.
Is that your navigation strategy?
That's my navigation strategy. If I see footprints and bike marks, I know I'm on the right track.
After the land section, Team Swisse Active have caught the race leaders again. They're applying the pressure on the kayak section. In an adventure race like this, there are always surprises. The pressure to stay ahead can lead to mistakes. A painful slip for Braden Curry. Now on the third day of his adventure racing debut, GP2 driver Mitch Evans seems to be getting fitter and faster every day. Though at this part of Hell's Gates, he's doing as much sideways travel as forwards. Guy Andrews calls them inshore. It's a sporting gesture. The closer you are to the rocks, the weaker the current and the faster you'll go. The leading two teams know the tricks too. But Jared and James cut the corner a little too fine. It's sheer frustration for the defending champions. The final section today is a 21-kilometre bike, but there are easier routes to Strawn than this one. Many of the enthusiast pairs and teams are reduced to a walk, even the team leaders.
It's like a bike on a sand dune. Should have brought my sand dune surfing board. But it's still fun, eh?
Strawn's a welcome sight at the end of it all. Somehow many competitors enjoying the race. The longer it goes on and the harder it gets.
Couldn't have prepared for what it's been like. It's really, really tough, but sense of achievement at the end of each day is really worth it.
Yeah, if you can look beyond the hurt, then it really is a lot of fun. It's been good.
Kayaking, never really done much of that before, so yeah, it was unreal to be out there on the water today. So yeah, we've had a cracking day.
Others survive a tough course only to fall at the finish. In the elites, Usher and Curry took advantage of a day that was more pedal and paddle than running to maintain their lead. Having been in the physios before the day started, it's a relief for Richard. Mark Hinder and Alex Hunt remain third, and they've still got a chance if the leaders slip up. But the defending champions have had to push their limits to hold on to second place and their hopes of a title defence.
We gave it our all, and you know, James pushed so hard today. He's sort of a bit kind of lost his legs at the last bit of the bike, but you know, tomorrow's another day.
Like the leaders, they took every bonus checkpoint on offer today. An effort that took 7 hours on soft sand and tidal seas. Hunt and Hinder did the same, but look more likely to be fit for the remaining 2 days. They're already planning their game for tomorrow.
I think people are going to go ballistic on the first hill climb, so I think we just got to bide our time and know that we're going to be out there another 6 or 7 hours again and try and come home strong at the end.
Day 4 of 5 takes place in Mountfield National Park, one of Tasmania's oldest. It's just an hour from Hobart and famous for waterfalls, wild plants and, in winter, downhill skiing. Today's effort, though, begins with the opposite, a massive 16-kilometre climb to reach the resort at Lake Dobson. And that's just the first of 3 bike sections today, totalling almost 50 kilometres, with another 22 k's of running that will take in Russell Falls. Finally, the teams get onto the water for an 11-kilometre paddle to the finish. Right now, it's a matter of getting those legs, worn out by 3 days of activity, ready for the brutal first section.
They're very sore, obviously. They know that they've gained some confidence from the previous 3 days. There will be certain competitors that have definitely had a special day out of those first 3, somewhere on the line where they feel their confidence is very high and they've got something from them. Well, of course we can get through this. Yeah, it's going to be a long, tough climb, but we can get through this. Yeah, we're sore, but we can get over the top of this, no problem at all. So yeah, just get moving. I think that's the first thing, that first couple of kilometres when the soreness is still at its worst. Once the blood's flowing, everything is a little bit easier after that.
Hinder and Hunt are straight to the front. A change of plan, it seems, perhaps sensing that second place Kohler and Preto are vulnerable to attack. They've built a good lead on the climb. Wallace and Atkinson aren't rising to the challenge. Ken's on tow and Courtney taking the strain.
Get him warm now.
Everyone who makes the top is hurting somewhere.
That was really sore. My bum is in agony.
James Preto still doesn't look fully fit as they set off on a 15-kilometre run loop on Mount Bridges. Hunt and Hinder skipping over the rough ground. Mark's 22-year-old race partner is keeping the tempo high.
Hard work, diminishing returns. I think that's taken about 60 minutes for 75-minute bonus.
Usher and Curry are fearsome opponents though. Back in the lead, no injury seems to be able to slow them down for long. The remaining run stages take in a spectacular sequence of waterfalls. Before they get onto the river further downstream for a whitewater paddle to the finish. Usher and Curry as relentless as on the first day. Having been towed around by Courtney Atkinson for most of day 4, Ken Wallace finally gets to be the engine room. He won't like getting passed by Hinder and Hunt. The New Zealanders, though, are first over the line. Richard has run through his ankle injury and they put in another solid day's work. With illness overcoming James Preto, the defending champions drop to 4th place. And with Guy Andrews also suffering from sickness, the main threats to the Kiwis are falling away. Mark Hinder's realised he's possibly racing with a future star.
The second run, after we'd done a 2 hour 40 run to start with, and then 2 more runs, he was just pushing me along the whole time, so absolutely fantastic work. He's very strong for a 22-year-old.
Day 5 begins with a descent from the summit of Mount Wellington to the race finish on the waterside in Hobart. With 40 kilometres of biking, over 20 kilometres of running and a 12-kilometre paddle section, the last effort will be no easier than the rest.
I think Hobart for us to finish there is important just because it's obviously the capital city of Tasmania, and also people can fly in and out and see the finish of the race. We also have the fun run on the morning of the race here, so to have both events going, it just makes sense to have that in Hobart. And also Mount Wellington is just so dramatic, and it sits up there, and it's always cold up the top there. People can't believe the temperature difference from the top to the bottom, but it's always fresh.
The air is bracing, whether you're the elite race leader or in the running for last place like Tasmanian MP and Challenge veteran Adam Brooks of Team Fuzz.
Yeah, you see the goosebumps.
It's a downhill race today. Downhill race.
Despite that claim, it all begins by going uphill. And once they've descended from the top of the mountain, there'll be plenty more climbs to sting the legs and lungs. After a quick descent through the trees, they're onto the bikes. Jared can't win the event, but he's racing the only way he knows. There's no fear on the bike as the Mount Wellington descent continues. Others find the rocky surface a real handful. It's a real relief to reach the road and the checkpoint. This checkpoint's also challenging to reach. Adam Brooks, a casualty on the track.
Bit of wee graze? Yeah, a bit of bark off. Anyway, happens on the big runs, but it's great fun anyway. It's worth it.
bikes and bodies are taking a beating. But with the final kayak to Hobart and the finish coming up, there's relief in sight. It's a sunny day in the state capital as the 5-day adventure comes to an end. The two New Zealanders, Richard Usher and Braden Curry, came to make up for last year and win the race. With an irresistible performance, they did just that, making it look easier than it probably was.
It's nice to be here and to have it finished, and it's the end of the stress and we can relax and enjoy it. So, we've had a great week and been some amazing places around Tasmania that we've seen.
I think today it all stacks up. I found it pretty tough out there today. And I definitely felt the 5 days of racing, that's for sure.
In fifth, Red Bull were the first of the non-specialist multi-sport teams. The defending champions Swisse Active, as well as Team Rexona, fell away on the last 2 days due to illness, leaving Hunt and Hinder to finish a strong week with a second place.
It's the deepest field that there's been in the Mark Webber Challenge, and looking at the top teams there, we were thinking that there's 4 or 5, maybe even 6 teams that could potentially finish on the podium. And with our late team change, we were thinking, well, if we can finish in the top 3, we'd be absolutely ecstatic, and we've managed to do that. So, last 3 years and 3 podium finishes, including a win, so absolutely ecstatic with that.
Super challenging this year. Had a lot of battles out on the course. Kept Braden and Richard honest. Just a few things didn't go our way, and it made all the difference.
Red Bull gave those professional adventure teams a fright at times.
It just goes to show with this adventure racing, you never give up, because we thought we were out of the race to start with, and then it ended up okay.
I'm wrapped that it's over, that's for sure. I'm absolutely ecstatic. It's a great event. It's at the moment, I'll probably tell you, no, I'm never doing another one again, but ask me in a week's time and I'll probably be all for it.
Today I felt really good all day, finished strongly, which was always nice, and I've just absolutely loved the experience. It's been absolutely amazing, massive buzz.
A huge reward and something that I'll look back on, and it'll be one of the highlights of my career.
It's just been an absolutely incredible 5 days, of seeing Tassie. It's just blown us away.
There's highs and lows throughout the day, and they're not always going to be the same as your teammate, and we just had to accept each other's abilities and strengths and weaknesses at times, and I think that's where we really excelled.
I can't believe we've done a 5-day race. I'm exhausted and think I might cry.
If you're going to do something once in a lifetime, you might as well do this, I reckon.
A bit of a dream a couple of years ago, never thought I'd get to do this. And to run beside some of the most elite athletes in the world as well. It's just, it's an amazing experience.